Mike Tyson looked unbeatable. Heavyweight champions feared him. Opponents entered the ring already shaken. Knockouts arrived with terrifying certainty. In his prime, it seemed impossible that any fighter alive could truly defeat him. But some fights are decided long before they begin. Because while Tyson prepared for rivals across the ring, another opponent had already entered his life. One that required no gloves, no rounds, no referee. It followed him through victories, through fame, through collapse. Fans searched for the rival who would end Tyson. History debated the moment he fell. Yet the truth is far darker. The fight Mike Tyson was destined to lose was never against another man. It was against the force growing within him, patient, powerful, and inevitable. In the late 1980s, Mike Tyson didn't just dominate heavyweight boxing, he terrified it. Opponents didn't simply prepare to fight him, they prepared to survive him. Because when Tyson stepped into the ring, and the outcome often felt predetermined. His style erased hope. Explosive head movement made punches miss by inches. Relentless forward pressure collapsed distance instantly. Hooks and uppercuts detonated with frightening speed and finality. But beyond technique, Tyson projected inevitability. He fought with total conviction that destruction would occur, and that certainty infected opponents before the first exchange. Champions froze. Undefeated contenders unraveled. The veterans abandoned strategy and fought only to endure. Knockouts piled up in brutal succession, belts unified, records shattered. At 20, Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion in history. By 22, he held every major title. By 23, he seemed beyond challenge, an unstoppable force reshaping the division. To the world, he looked unbeatable. To rivals, unavoidable. To boxing itself, singular. It appeared impossible that any fight connected to the sport could ever defeat him. Yet even at the height of this era of fear, the fight Mike Tyson was destined to lose had already begun. Not in the ring, but inside the very force that made him terrifying. Long before Mike Tyson lost a title, a fight, or his aura of invincibility, another struggle had already taken root within him. It didn't arrive through defeat, it arrived through nature. Tyson's power was never just physical. It came from intensity. Extremes of emotion, aggression, and impulse fused into one explosive personality. Under Cus D'Amato, those extremes were contained, disciplined, directed with precision. Cus didn't try to change Tyson's nature, he controlled it. But when Cus died, that control vanished. And for the first time, Tyson carried his full intensity without restraint. At first, nothing seemed wrong. The knockouts continued, the dominance remained, the fear endured. But internally, the equilibrium had shifted. The aggression that once served discipline began pushing beyond it. Impulse grew louder than structure. Confidence expanded into ego. Tyson later admitted he wasn't regulating himself anymore. He was reacting, releasing, and living without boundaries. This was the fight already underway inside him, not against opponents, not against rivals, but against the very force that powered his greatness. Now expanding without control. And because that force was part of him, it was the one fight Mike Tyson could never escape, and perhaps never truly win. As Mike Tyson's dominance peaked, the world around him transformed into something far more dangerous than any opponent. Limitless fame. Money surged endlessly. Attention never stopped. Access became unrestricted. And without Cus D'Amato's authority, Tyson now moved through this world without the one force that had ever restrained him. Structure dissolved. A routine faded. Discipline weakened. The environment around Tyson rewarded impulse rather than control. Those close to him praised instead of corrected. Freedom expanded while accountability shrank. Power went unchecked. The aggression that once drove precision now fueled excess. Confidence hardened into ego. Intensity spilled into recklessness. Tyson later reflected that during this period, he wasn't directing his nature. He was being driven by it. The champion who once controlled chaos was now living inside it. And because this environment amplified the very force already growing within him, the outcome became increasingly inevitable. Not through rivals, not through defeats, but through the removal of restraint from the intensity that defined him. The fight Mike Tyson was destined to lose was no longer just internal. It was being accelerated by the world surrounding him. By 1990, the internal fight Mike Tyson had been losing for years finally surfaced in a way the world could no longer ignore. In Tokyo, against Buster Douglas, the most feared champion in boxing entered the ring lacking the preparation and discipline that once defined him. The power remained, but the control guiding it had eroded. When Douglas knocked Tyson out, it shocked the sport. But beneath the shock was something deeper, confirmation of a collapse already underway. What followed accelerated the inevitability. Legal turmoil mounted, behavior became erratic, stability vanished. Then came prison in 1992, years removed from boxing during his physical prime. Isolation hardened anger, resentment replaced focus, and the internal struggle now faced almost no resistance. When Tyson returned, the physical force still existed, but equilibrium was gone. Then came Evander Holyfield, on 2 fights that exposed not just resistance to Tyson's power, but imbalance within Tyson himself. And in 1997, the collapse reached its defining moment, the bite. In that instant, the world witnessed control completely give way. It wasn't simply rage. It wasn't simply frustration. It was the inevitable conclusion of a fight Tyson had been losing long before the ring exposed it. The fight he was destined to lose, against the force within him that no opponent ever needed to defeat. Years after the chaos of his career had passed, Mike Tyson began speaking about his past with a level of honesty that contrasted sharply with the invincible image of his prime. He no longer framed his downfall as betrayal, bad luck, or opponents surpassing him. Instead, he described something far more final: loss of mastery over himself. Tyson admitted that the discipline which once made him unstoppable had never fully lived inside him. It had been structured by Cus D'Amato's authority and guidance. When Cus died, Tyson said, he lost the barrier that restrained his extremes. Left alone with fame, power, and impulse, he defaulted to his most volatile instincts. He reflected that success removed fear from his life, and without fear, he stopped regulating his behavior. The aggression that once served precision became recklessness. Confidence hardened into ego. Intensity slipped into chaos. Looking back, Tyson didn't dwell on punches he absorbed. He spoke about choices he made, discipline abandoned, limits ignored, control surrendered. And with that recognition came the harshest truth of all. The fight that destroyed him had begun long before he understood it. And by the time he saw it clearly, it was already the fight he was destined to lose. For years, people searched for the moment Mike Tyson was defeated. Some pointed to Buster Douglas, others to prison, many to fame, money, or scandal. But Tyson's own reflections revealed something deeper and far more inevitable. Every collapse traced back to the same source. Not lack of strength, not lack of skill, not lack of opportunity, but lack of mastery over himself. The aggression that made him terrifying became volatility, without restraint. The confidence that fueled dominance became ego without limits. The intensity that drove greatness became chaos without control. These forces were never taken from Tyson by opponents. They were never imposed by circumstance. They were his own nature, uncontained, amplified, and ultimately decisive. And that is why the fight Mike Tyson was destined to lose could never be won in the ring. Because no opponent could defeat Tyson at his peak. But without self-mastery, even the most powerful fighter alive cannot defeat himself. Mike Tyson's career remains one of the most powerful stories in boxing history. A rise built on fear, dominance, and unmatched intensity. He possessed rare physical gifts, speed, power, ferocity, that made him nearly unstoppable against opponents. Yet his story endures not because of who he defeated, but because of what he could not overcome. Tyson showed that greatness without self-mastery is fragile, that power without restraint eventually turns inward. He conquered champions, unified titles, and reshaped an era. But the fight that defined his destiny most was never fought across the ring. It was fought within him. And in the end, the fight Mike Tyson was destined to lose was the one no fighter escapes, the battle against himself.